Bibliography, and today we're on Norway. Going back into Scandinavian kind of thing. So yeah. Pardon me? Maybe it's like starting off with history as usual. So yeah. Here we go. And it's like the first people who did arrive in Norway arrived about 7,000 BC at the end of the last ice age, as the rising current temperature made the country a little more habitable. And the first Norwegians lived there, hunted elk, deer, seal and whales, and by fishing. And around 300 BC farming was introduced to Norway, and the earliest farmers made tools and weapons from stone, but after about 1500 BC bronze was used. And from around 5 BC onwards, iron. And from 200 AD they began to use a form of writing called runes, which we've kind of gone over in previous videos here. And during the 9th century, the Vikings from Norway raided Scotland, England, Ireland and France, and raided as far south as Spain, which were at the time was in Muslim hands. But the Norwegians were not just raiders. They settled the Hebrides, like islands west of Scotland, and the Shetland and Orkney Islands, and Norwegians also settled the Isle of Man being an island between England and Ireland. But in the same century, in the 9th century, Norway was divided into several kingdoms, and Norway took longer than other Scandinavian states to become united. And at the end of the 9th century, Harald Fairhair gained control of the western coast and called himself King of Norway, but he really only controlled part of what is now Norway. And he was followed by Ed Bloodaxe from 900 to 939, cheery name. The next king of Norway was Hakon from 939 to 960, and he was attempted to convert Norway to Christianity, but was unsuccessful in those attempts. And Olaf, who ruled from 995 to 1000, converted the coastal area of Norway to Christianity, and Olaf Haraldsson from 1015 to 1030, he was the effective king of all of Norway, converted the inland areas to Christianity. And after Olaf's death, his son Magnus was elected king of Norway. Sorry, just eaten. And he followed by Harald Hardrada in 1047. In 1066, Hardrada tried to make himself king of England, but was killed by the Battle of Stamford Bridge in Yorkshire, as Harold's army was routed. Not to be confused with Harold, who was king of England but was shot in the eye at the Battle of Hastings just before William the Conqueror became William I of England. And that ended any Norwegian political involvement in England. Norwegian society was divided into 3 classes. Like, there was the thralls or slaves at the bottom, and being a slave was hard and all, as they were made to do like the hardest and most unpleasant work. And then above them were the free men, and then who were wealthy and could be very poor depending on how much land they own. And then above them were the nobles or jarls, which were essentially like kings in their own right, of their own land. And when Norway was converted to Christianity in the 11th century, and in 995, Olav Tryggvason made himself king of Norway, except for the Knight of Southeast, which was in Danish hands at the time. And despite Hardrada's death in 1066, his family ruled Norway until 1130. However, after the death of Sigurd the Crusader, Norway suffered a long series of civil wars. And peace and stability returned to Norway under Håkon IV, who lived from 1217 to 1265. Under Håkon, Norway became a greater power, as Norway annexed both Iceland and Greenland. And Håkon was followed by his son Magnus, also known as Lawmender, and in 1066 Magnus realised that it was not feasible to defend the Hebrides against attack from Scotland. So the Hebrides and the Isle of Man to the Scottish king, sold the Hebrides and Isle of Man to the Scottish king. But the Shetland and Orkney Islands were given to Scotland in 1465, not 68. In 1319, Norway was temporarily united with Sweden, as King Erik of Norway was elected King of Sweden, and the two kingdoms remained united until 1355. Yeah, it wasn't enough to keep them all together. And meanwhile, in 1349 to 1350, the Black Death struck Norway and devastated the country, and possibly somewhere around half the population was killed, died during the epidemic. And later in the 14th century, Norway was joined to both Denmark and Sweden, as Margaret I was Queen of Denmark and Sweden, and Norwegians recognised their nephews as their heir apparent to the Norwegian throne. And in 1395, he was crowned King of all three kingdoms at Kalmar, but Sweden broke away in 1523, but Norway remained united with Denmark until 1318. And in the 1530s, the Reformation reached Norway, and the Norwegians followed the Danes in accepting their Lutheran doctrines. And in the 16th, 17th and 18th century, trade and commerce grew in Norway. And in the early 17th century, Norwegian towns grew. And in 1624, Oslo was destroyed by a fire, but the Danish king Christian rebuilt and named himself Christiania. By the old name of Oslo was restored in 1924. And in the 19th century, Norway exported fish, timber, iron ore and copper. And in the 19th, 18th century, iron works were founded in the south, and they were able to make all kinds of iron goods and all, and Norwegian merchant navy also grew exponentially, kind of thing. And in 1769, a census showed that Norway had a population of about 728,000, and the largest town was Bergen with a population of about 14,000. However, the growth of trade and industry mustn't really be exaggerated. In the 18th century, the vast majority of Norwegians were farmers or fishermen. In 1813, Swedish forces invaded Denmark. And in January 1918, Denmark was forced to surrender Norway to Sweden. However, some of the Norwegians rebelled against the move, and they were led by Crown Prince Christian Frederick. He called an assembly on the 17th of May 1814, and the Norwegian assembly drew up a constitution as Christian Frederick was elected king. However, in July 1918, the Swedes invaded Norway, and Christian Frederick stepped down, and the Norwegians accepted the Swedish king. However, he agreed to accept the constitution. Now the Swedish king controlled foreign affairs, Norway was allowed a considerable amount of autonomy. And a Bank of Norway was founded in 1816, and the Norwegian nobility was abolished in 1821. However, the years after 1815 were ones of economic hardship for Norway, partly because the British timber market was lost to Canada. And yet things improved by the 1840s and onwards. And in the late 19th century, Norwegian agriculture have no idea where I am. And from the late 19th century, Norwegian agriculture and its timber industry flourished. The Norwegian merchant fleet grew rapidly, and by the end of the century is the third largest in the world after the Americans and the British. The population also grew rapidly in the 19th century due to the economic rise and all. And at the beginning of the century it was somewhere around 883,000, but by the end of the century it reached 2,240,000 roughly. And that was despite the fact that many Norwegians had emigrated to the USA in the latter half of the 19th century. And at the same time, nationalism in Norway grew during the 19th century. Matters came to a head in 1882 when the Norwegian Parliament, or Storting, passed a law which stated that members of the government must take part in debates in the Storting. And the Storting passed the law 3 times, but each time the Swedish King Oscar II returned. Eventually the Norwegians decided to impeach the entire government, and they were impeached and convicted in 1884 and forced to resign. And afterwards the king was forced to give in. From then on, Norway was a parliamentary democracy. And in 1898 all men except those receiving poor relief were given the vote. Now in 1891 onwards, Norwegians demanded a separate consular service, but the Swedes refused. Negotiations were held but broke down early in 1905, as the Storting took unilateral action in passing a law creating a Norwegian consular service, and the Swedish king vetoed the bill. Now the Norwegian government then resigned again, and the king could not form a new government. And in June 1985, politician Christian Michelsen argued that the Swedish king had effectively abdicated by failing to appoint a new government, and he was no longer acting as King of Norway. So the Storting declared that the union with Sweden was dissolved because of the king ceasing to function as a Norwegian king. And on the 13th of August 1905, the Norwegians voted in a referendum, and the overwhelming majority approved of independence formally. And negotiations were held with Swedes. An agreement was reached by the 23rd of September 1905, and the Swedish king formally gave up all claims to the Norwegian throne on the 26th of August 1905. And the question of who should be head of state in Norway was answered by a referendum on the 12th/13th of November 1905. And Norwegians voted for a monarchy, and Prince Karl of Denmark became King Haakon the 7th, Haakon being spelled like Haakon. And women were given the right to vote in local elections in 1907 and in national elections in 1913. So about 5 years before women here in the UK were allowed to vote. As we made a big deal about women's rights to vote here in the UK, considering it's like a centenary, being able to vote for like a centenary kind of thing. And after independence, the Norwegian economy started to prosper and hydroelectricity boomed. And in 1915 a 10-hour day was introduced. And during the First World War, Norway remained neutral. However, as a result of unrestricted German submarine warfare, half the Norwegian fleet was sunk, and about 2,000 Norwegian sailors lost their lives. And in the 1920s and 30s, unemployment was high in Norway, but the depression didn't seem to hit Norway the same way it did the rest of Europe, as it was Norway kind of remained moderately okay. So yeah. And in 1925, Norway annexed Spitsbergen, and during the Second World War, they began as neutral, but on the 9th of April 1940, the Germans decided to invade Norway, which is like many miles away from Denmark and all that, and like Denmark, German and Holland and all that kind of thing, which were at the time occupied by Germany. And they quickly captured Narvik, Trondheim, Bergen and Oslo. When the French and British sent help, they recaptured Narvik on the 26th of May. However, the military situation in France was deteriorating, and the British and French were forced to withdraw the forces by the 7th of June. And also on the 7th of June, the King and government fled to Britain. Despite the brave resistance, and all the Norwegians were forced to capitulate on the 10th of June. Norway was occupied for the rest of the war. Are you okay down there? I'm assuming it's all okay down there. And everything sounds okay. There's there's a person that's considered a traitor to Norway, called Quisling, cooperated with the Germans, but many Norwegians had resisted. About 35,000 of them were arrested by the Germans, and furthermore the Norwegian merchant fleet fled to Britain. The merchant ships were considered help to Britain, but half of them were sunk during the war. So yeah, and after 1945, Norway gave up a policy of neutrality, and in 1949 joined NATO, and soon recovered after the war, and the 1950s, 60s and 70s were years of prosperity, as there was full employment, but unemployment rose late in the 80s. Sorry about this. And in the 1970s, Norway began to exploit vast reserves of oil and gas in the North Sea, and meanwhile the numbers of jobs in traditional industries like agriculture and timber declined, while the number of people employed in service industries increased. In 1972, the Norwegians voted 43% to 47% not to join the common market, which was a forerunner of the EU, what is now the EU. And in 1994, the Norwegians voted against joining the EU in another referendum. And so they kind of done okay, despite not being EU and all. It's still a prosperous country and have a high standard of living. And Norway also escaped the recession of 2009, relatively unscathed, and unemployment was only 3.1% in 2012, which is much lower than most European countries. When in 2017 it was only 4%, and the population is somewhere around 5.3 million people. Yeah. Moving on to my sisters are doing a fashion show type thing. Now we're moving on to the language of Norwegian and all. And now early Scandinavians developed North Germanic language called Proto-Norse. Now Proto-Norse is a written language in the form of runes, And the alphabet is Elder Futhark, and as Elder Futhark had 24 different characters or letters that were based on the Latin alphabet and symbols from parts of Italy. Later, the runic alphabet was reduced to 16 characters. The Vikings spoke Old Norse, which originated from an even older language, Proto-Norse. Eventually, Old Norse divided into two different languages, as Old West Norse was spoken in Norway and Old East Norse was spoken in what is now Sweden and Denmark. And since the 1500s, Norwegians had no written language of their own, although most of them spoke Norwegian in various dialects that with no uniform or consistency. And in the years after 1814, Danish continued to be the only written language in Norway, as well as the language of government and business. But began to change in the 1830s and 1840s, when Norwegians started writing their own books in their own language, and two old authors, sorry for botching names, as Peter Christian Absjordensen and Jørgen Moe collected oral folk tales from various parts of the country, and in 1845 they published those stories in written Norwegian. And after Asbjørnsen, Moe and others broke the ice, more authors began to publish books and other writings in Norwegian. And despite the efforts from many people such as Asbjørnsen, I think Moe still knows standardised Norwegian language. Until a young private teacher from Western Norway named Ivan Asen decided to change it, and he was self-taught philologist who studied Old Norse and other languages, and he decided to undertake the monumental task of a new written Norwegian language. As Asen travelled throughout most of Norway in the 1840s, and each village and farmstead he listened to how Norwegians spoke, and he compiled a long list of words, phrases, sayings, and listened to how the Norwegians spoke. He compiled a long list of words, phrases, sayings, and definitions, as well as word endings, conjugations, inflections, and grammar. And many people thought it was strange that he would just hear them talk, but they were generally accommodating, as Asen spent almost all of his time in rural areas, because he felt that the dialects from the farmers were the purest form of Norwegian, and were at least influenced by Danish and other foreign languages. However, rural dialects were somewhat different from each other, and while narrowing down his final list of words and phrases, he had to choose from many different alternatives. After he finished his research, Asen created a new written Norwegian language, which he called Eidsmar, as he published a grammar book here in 1848 and a dictionary in 1850 for the new language, and his artificial written language became very popular among Norwegians, especially in western Norway, from which he borrowed most of his words and rules of grammar. However, many people from cities in eastern Norway did not like Asen's new language, and he felt that written Norwegian should be based on Danish, but modified by Swedish pronunciation and other Norwegian words and phrases, so he supported the written language that was called Dano-Norwegian, or Riksmål. And in 1892, the languages were given equal status in Norwegian elementary schools, and there are presently two written national languages in Norway, like Nynorsk, like New Norwegian, is based on Asen's Eidsmar, and Bokmål, like book language, is derived from Riksmål and Dano-Norwegian. So Norway is one of the very few countries in the world so far to have an artificially created language, Nynorsk, as a national language, and in school students in Norway have given the opportunity to take their classes in either bokmål or nynorsk, and about 87% selected bokmål, although new students must show proficiency in both languages. And bokmål is also used in the newspapers and books as a Norwegian language classes for American, British and other foreign people. And in Norway, bokmål and nynorsk are considered written languages, and most Norwegians are likely to speak their own native dialect, which are not identical to either of the two written languages. So yeah, the catwalk started, and as well as not getting off stage. And now it's like moving on to legends and all that. There's a few going around, like trolls and all that. Probably made famous after the recent Trolls film by DreamWorks and all that. I love the cloud in that film. It's just got so epic. So trolls are a term used to describe very supernatural beings in Nordic folklore and storytelling traditions, as roots in Norse mythology. Of both appearance and characteristics can vary, but the creatures are often both dangerous and stupid, and they tend to live in wilderness and areas that are inaccessible to man, such as mountain caves, dense forests and the oceans. And the troll legends are very old, and we can say they're kind of a bit more familiar feature of fairy tales and folklore, in particular Bjørsen and those Norwegian folk tales from 1844, where the trolls are often the main characters. As trolls are described as strong, evil and dangerous giants, as they were described as ugly with large noses and eyes the size of plates, and often had several heads or just one eye. So it's not exactly too similar from Cyclops from Greek mythology and all that. And gods and humans were their enemies, and they were angered by the smell of Christian blood. Most lived in the mountains or in a distant cold country, but trolls living in the oceans and the forest are also to be expected and all. Then there's giant troll, as the trolls featured in Nordic literature and art and music during the Romantic period of the 1800s, as well as later on. As well as later on, the most famous of maybe those is Theodore Kittleson's fairy tale illustrations and in Henrik A. Bessen's dramatic poem Peer Gynt from 1867. Inspired by the giant, Kittleson drew his troll with a cow's tail. In the poem, the main character meets trolls and mythical beings in Gubbins Hall inside the mountain, and the various creatures differ in appearance, such as having pig's head and so on and so forth, but the trolls have tails. And something Peer also gets if he does, not leave the mountains and shun daylight. Traditionally told tales associated with a hoarder who belong to a different species. Get to them later. And Ibsen's plays is believed to be the first time the trolls have tails. And furthermore, Ibsen's Troll King, Dovre Gubin, is not as stupid as trolls usually are, as he asked Peer to figure out what is the difference between a troll and a man. And the trolls have a saying, "Be true to yourself and to hell with the world." And Peer Gynt adopted this as his motto. An experience of Peer Gynt's play at Gala was first week in August. And under Fossen Family Park, where trolls and legends are the theme. The country's very own fairy tale adventure park, and heard inspiration for Pinterest. And the hood in Fosslin Troll was about 14 metres above ground and is one of the most photographed in the world. So it's kind of photogenic. Then there's Nokken, meaning the neck, as in all legends the neck is a water spirit depicted as a frightening evil creature, which relates to both demons and people of the underworld, as he lives at the water's edge and lures humans and animals into the water, especially after sunset, and is particularly dangerous to babies who have not been christened or to pregnant women. So yeah, not sounding too good at the moment. However, he can also be a sad creature living in loneliness and complain about not being able to receive salvation and to be able to go to heaven. And our tales, the neck is associated with luring people into the water to drown them, or as a ghost of the sea, foreboding drowning, suicide, death, and bad weather, and with his ugly screams of mournful groans. Many other legends claim that it requires a victim every year before he is satisfied, and some stories he grabs hold of the ones about to drown and does not let go, and other people they drown up and end up in beautiful green halls on the seabed. And these scary stories about the neck can serve two purposes: to keep children and young people away from dangerous lakes, wild animals, and people they did not know. And they are also a way to explain to deal with tragic drowning accidents and the unknown and the forces of nature. The neck is often invisible, but can be shaped like a piece of wood, a raft, or something else floating around. They may also go on land and take the shape of a horse or a person to get hold of his victims. And often he appears as an attractive young man, like maybe a fiddler with like young long hair who seduces like young women and lures them to their deaths. And in many stories the neck features the shape of a stunning pale grey horse, and he uses enchanting songs and music to spellbind his victims, and sometimes a fiddler, and sometimes we play fiddle, wherein sometimes he plays the harp and all. Then there's a holder or holder. In Norwegian folklore, the holder is a supernatural seductive female creature. In plural form, holderer is also used for people of the underworld, and in recent history she is a young girl with a thick golden hair and a cow's tail. And this is an image created by Norwegian artists illustrating supernatural creatures in the 1800s. And descriptions dating further back can kind of vary in she kind of varies in the appearance and all. So yeah. So yeah, that is Norway for you. I'll link everything in the description below, and yeah, I'll see you later on for the news. So yeah, bye for now.